Today's goal, should I choose to accept it, which, I mean, what else am I gonna do? The goal is to finally get my four-wheel drive frame into a rolling chassis. And there's two major things I have left to finish up to make that happen. Number one, on the lower control arms up front, I got a little bit of fabrication and welding left to do just to kind of finish up some reinforcements. And number two, that many, out back, I've got to get rear axle installed onto the spring. So, yapping about it, let's get to work. Somebody tell me in the comments if that's the center link on the right. I couldn't remember if it did it to the front or the back. I'm pretty positive it was that way, but let me know. I was going to say something about this plate. I need to modify this plate. When I laser cut these, I had no idea exactly what the spacing was. I measured it as close as I could, but I left the holes 3/8 instead of about 1/2 inch, so I've got plenty of room to work with. But I need to kind of work down here a little bit just to make this clear, that little, I don't know, that little tab that sticks out on the bottom of the ball joint. So all I really need to do is kind of open that up a little bit and then ease back like here and there. And that's pretty much it, because once I have that clearance, I'll just clean this guy up here and basically, well, you get the picture, basically weld it on right there. And we just swept up, so now we get to make more metal shavings on the floor. My favorite thing. So, basically what I need to do now is I got most of the paint kind of cleaned off as much as I could, but ball joint goes like that. The little plate kind of sandwiches on top. I'm just going to clamp this together and weld it. I'm going to drill these holes through after I get it welded in, just that way I can ensure I have perfect alignment, as long as I make sure they're at least kind of centered. But what I'm going to do different on this one, when I did the last one, I just clamped it like this and welded it, which made it really tight to get this in and out. I am going to take, that won't stay, but I'm going to take a 15 thousandths feeler gauge and basically set it along the top like that. Because whenever you weld this, basically it kind of tightens up. So hopefully that'll give me just enough room to have this a tight fit, not sloppy, but also not like ridiculously tight. So we'll see how this goes. Down to the last bit of filler. actually, that's almost perfect because it slides in, but it's not sloppy. I like it. I like it a lot. Finish weld that real quick. This will probably move and become tighter, but that's all right. I'm not afraid to admit it. It happens to the best of us. Not that I'm the best of anything. So if you're unfamiliar with TIG welding, this is tungsten, and this is the electrode that actually carries the electricity from the machine into the part. This is not really a consumable, but you have to keep it sharpened, and as you just saw, I actually accidentally dipped it in the molten puddle. So I put it in my drill, put it on low speed. I've got my grinder, which is only for tungsten. You get these at Harbor Freight, they're super cheap. So just basically turn it on, and I'm not trying to flip you guys off, I just have to steady this against the wheel and sharpen it until all that molten metal is gone. And that's what you want to have, nice sharp point with no metal, only tungsten. This one tungsten I've had in here for probably a year, and I cut these in half when they're brand new. I run a stubby cap on the back, but these are normally like probably about an inch longer. It's how much has been ground off over the last year or so. And for what it's worth, I run about 3/4 of an inch of stick out on my number 12 cup. This is almost guaranteed to fall over and hit me in the head. Place your bets below. All right, so throughout this process, you've seen me mock the suspension up and take it apart and mock it up. Several different reasons for that. Mainly, it's just part of the build process. I do want to make sure everything clears, which is why I'm putting this side together. But there's something I really haven't talked about yet, which has been in the works for a little while now. There's a chance, I hate even saying anything because I don't want to jinx it, but there's a chance that this chassis and some other stuff are going to have to take a trip soon. So I really want to get this thing at least sort of in a roller status. The axle just showed up. We'll talk about that in a second. I don't have a spring mount, but I can come up with something temporary if I have to, just to, go from the lower mount here up to the frame to hold the weight of this chassis up. I bought those junk wheels and tires a while ago. I need this thing to roll, potentially, like on a trailer. So that's all I'm going to say about it for now. I don't want to jinx anything, but this year could be a big one. So I was just going through the calendar, and it looks like I actually bought this frame, pretty sure back in early November of last year. Now it's January 20th, so it's like, what, 3 months ago? There's a lot of work that's gone into this frame. Now we are just barely getting it into roller status, kinda. It's pretty close, but there was a lot we did to this chassis over the years, I don't know why I said years, but so if you remember when we first got it, there's a lift kit on it. You can see that weld bead right there, if the camera will focus. Somebody chopped off the lower control arm mounts to fit the lift kit. They kind of butchered it, so I found some new ones, welded that back on. Same thing on the other side. The frame did have a little twist in it. We fixed that, and then we got all of our suspension stuff. And then to kind of satisfy my OCD, I spent a whole lot more time modifying that stuff and kind of beefing it up a little bit. But yeah, now after all that time, we finally have the front end sort of kind of more or less in a roller. The only two things we have left, we got to get an upper shock mount in, and we have to modify that motor mount, the frame side down there, just to get this to attach. But then the front of the frame's kind of pretty much done. So we need to turn our attention to the rear if we want this thing to roll. Of course, we need an axle. Underneath the UglyTruck right now is an 8.6 10 bolt, which is a decent axle, but I wanted something a little bit stronger just because whenever this motor is done, we got our turbos on there and all that good stuff, it's going to be putting out probably 1,500 horsepower and at least that much torque, probably a fair amount more torque to be honest. So the 10 bolt probably would work, but I don't like probably. You guys have figured that out. I like absolutes, and there's one axle that is much stronger and it'll actually match the gear ratios that I have up front as well. And that's a 14 bolt, and I got one built from Got Torque Differentials, and this is a pretty bad unit, so check it out. 14 bolt semi-floater. This would have been found like from the factory in, say, a Vortec Max truck, some earlier, what do they call them, like heavy half, I don't know what they call them, heavy half Silverado half tons, but it's a 9.5-inch ring gear, and then Got Torque Differential, they went through it, they put new axle tubes on it, they put new ends on here. I believe this is like a Ford 9-inch style, so there is a bearing retainer here. There's no C-clip in this axle now, so that's kind of like a NHRA thing. We've got these much stronger axle shafts here. It's got a Detroit True Track in it already. We have 342 gears. That's kind of what I am shooting for because this big block isn't going to spin a whole lot of RPM, but I do want to do a whole lot of mile an hour. So that's the axle that we're sticking out back. If you've got a Silverado and you want to go fast and you want a good strong axle, you should really check out those guys at Got Torque Differential because they have a lot of different options. I had thought about doing one of their drop-in 9 inches, a Ford 9-inch, but the only reason I didn't do that is just because there's no ratio that'll cross and match up to the GM 8.25 IFS in a 9-inch. So I could have stuck with the 8.6 10 bolt. They got a lot of upgrades for that one as well. C-clip eliminators, spools, bigger axle shafts. But I just decided for the weight of the truck at 5,000 pounds plus and the amount of torque, I just better go with the bigger, beefier one. So there it is, guys. We'll try to get this installed real quick and kind of mocked up. Of course, right now, again, mock-up phase, nothing's going to be permanent, but we need to make this thing roll. So let's get back to work. All right, so with these Calvert split monos, you can actually run the axle underneath the spring for like a stockish ride height, or you can flip it on top, which is what I'm gonna do. But I need to flip this centering pin because the spring perch is gonna sit up here. And I've also gotta drill this out just a tiny bit. Technically, I have to drill it further ahead because when you do a flip kit on these, you're gonna slide the axle back just a hair. But for now, we'll center it and we'll deal with that at a later date. I don't think you really need to C-clamp these like you do a multi-leaf spring pack, but just in case. That's a 1/2-inch hole. I don't have a 9/16 drill bit, but I do have a step bit, so see how she does. Like butter. except it won't go all the way through. Simple as that. Perfect fit. Now, once again, mock-up is the name of the game. When I put this together for good, I'll have the CalTrack lower mounts. All I have now, just to hold this in, are these old stock mounts that normally go below. We'll just flip them, put them up, and put the U-bolts down from below, and it should work. It's like a poor man's flip kit right here. Well, my goal at the beginning of the day was to get this thing into a roller, and more or less we actually got that accomplished. Yeah, the front still needs a few odds and ends, but the big thing I'm excited about is to see this 14 bolt sitting under the truck. Big thanks to Got Torque Differentials. They built a killer axle here, so check them out if you need anything. The next thing for me on this axle anyway would be to weld these spring perches onto the axle tubes, but there's no cab on the truck, there's no bed on here. There's several thousand pounds of weight that's missing, and that's gonna compress the rear suspension. So I can't get those welded on just yet because that is what's gonna basically dictate the pinion angle. I can now though mock up like my anti-roll bar. I can continue on with the fabrication back here, like this cross member is gonna be moved ahead. I'll have my shock mounts attached to that. We're gonna replace this cross member with a straight one so we have room for our fuel tank. So the list is never ending, and the more and more I think about this, the more it overwhelms me, but that's okay. That's how these projects go. Thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate it. If you want to know more about the truck that this chassis is destined to go underneath, check out the last compilation video that we did of the UglyTruck build. It seems like just yesterday, but it was now 3 years ago that I bought the truck. Actually, it's almost 3 years to the day, weirdly enough. But yeah, 3 years has come and gone really quickly. We've transformed it from a stock 330,000 mile wore out Silverado into still a 330,000 mile Silverado, but one that's got a little bit more fun under the hood. So check out another video. Thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate it. Come back soon for more welding, probably. More welding.